পুষ্টিকর খাবারই কিন্তু সুস্থ থাকার চাবিকাঠি। আর এই পূজায় নিজেকে স্বাস্থ্যকর রাখবেন কিভাবে, এই সব টিপস দেওয়ার জন্য আজকের হেলথ কথার এপিসোড নিয়ে আমি সংযুক্তা চলে এসেছি। আসুন দেখে নেওয়া যাক কে রয়েছেন আজ আমার সাথে। আমি আজকে আমার সাথে পেয়ে গেছি Nutritionist Alan Vidyush Baptist. So welcome to Geo Bangla. Since puja is going on and pujar মধ্যে তো আমরা সবাই বাইরে গিয়ে টুকটাক খাওয়ার পছন্দই করি, but unhealthy খাবার এটা তো স্বাস্থ্যের পক্ষে খুবই খারাপ। তো which are the foods that we commonly consider unhealthy and why?
All right, so thank you so much for having me here, and it's a pleasure being here. Now, the most important question and the common question that I keep getting is, which food is healthy, which food is unhealthy, right? Which food groups should we eat, which food groups should we avoid? Now, one thing that I want to stress, since it's during the pujas, right, a lot of people, worry about that what do we eat or what do we consume during this time period. It is very important to remember that, our health, everyone is chasing after good health. That is not determined by what we eat during just 4 days or 5 days. Maybe during the puja celebration, right? Our health is determined by the choices that we make across a longer time period. For example, maybe I enjoy these 4 days of the pujas, right, or the 5 days, but the rest of the year, what exactly am I eating? What exactly am I consuming? That plays a bigger role in determining my health outcome. So, for instance, during the pujas, a lot of people, they have a lot of tasty, delicious food. Now, when it comes to overall health, during the rest of the year, if I'm eating, home cooked food, or I'm eating, healthy food, right, that will make sure that I don't become overweight or I don't become unhealthy. For instance, a lot of people worry that, okay, if I have one samosa, one kachori, this is unhealthy food because it is fried. But that one kachori or that one samosa is not going to make me overweight the next day. That's not how it works. But if I make it a daily habit, where I'm eating jalebis or rasgullas, or I'm eating my kachoris on a regular basis, unchecked, unmonitored, without any control, that creates a problem. So you can have so-called unhealthy foods maybe once in a while, or if you're indulging in one festival during a year, it's not a problem. But at the same time, we have to remember that while having these, tasty foods, having the home cooked food, having the traditional foods, along with that preserves our health. So that obsession over, classifying one food group as unhealthy and another group as healthy, we should come out of that.
স্যার, আমরা অনেক খাবার খেয়ে থাকি কিন্তু দিনের শেষে কোথাও গিয়ে প্রপার নিউট্রিয়েন্টস গুলো আমরা পাই না। সো হোয়াট শুড we intake so that we have a balanced diet?
So regarding the nutrients that are required on a daily basis, right, we studied about this in school. The nutrients are carbohydrates, protein, fats, all the micronutrients such as vitamin A, B, C. This should be in our diet on a regular basis. Everyone requires them in the correct amount. Unfortunately, today we have access to so many food delivery apps where someone can easily order any food in just a matter of minutes. What has happened is these foods, the biggest problem is that they are very rich in fats. Either they are loaded in, a lot of oil, a lot of fats, a lot of cream, and for example, a mixed vegetable that you order today from any application. What I've seen is that most of that dish, that mixed vegetable, it barely contains, a lot of green leafy vegetables. Probably will contain a lot of potatoes, a few carrots and beans, and is just loaded in masala and the cream. So people think that they're ordering, a mixed vegetable that will be a healthy option, but what's happening is that the way in which it is cooked, it is just too calorie dense, or it contains too many calories, right? So the recommendation or the solution is that when we are having foods, okay, we should have foods which are at home. Let's say we can have vegetables at home which are not that oily, which are not that greasy, green leafy vegetables, so that we get our fiber, so that we get all the micronutrients that we eat, and the fat intake is lowered. Today the fat intake has increased manifold and immensely, so that fat nutrient intake has to be reduced. When we eat a lot of vegetables at home, the fiber intake is increased, and our emphasis should also be there on good protein sources, right? Maybe a good amount of eggs in a day, maybe 1 or 2 eggs, which we have. Emphasis on fish, regular eating and consumption of fish with chicken, right? These can be a part of our regular diet so that we get our nutrients.
Since you said about junk food and unhealthy food এর সাথে কিন্তু প্রচুর health risks যুক্ত থাকে. So I would like to know what additional health risks are there and what precautions can be taken.
Right, so when we talk about junk foods, which means foods that are very rich in calories, very oily, right? When we consume these foods on a regular basis, consistently, what tends to happen is, of course, weight gain is the first thing that happens. And the problem with weight gain is we already know that it is not something that we notice overnight. So we continuously keep having these foods as a bad habit on a consistently daily basis. What happens is maybe one day when we're at a party, someone makes a comment that, oh, you've gained so much of weight, and then it hits us, and then it strikes us that, oh my goodness, I've gained a lot of weight. So that weight gain process happens in a very creeping format or style, right? So in the same way, just like the weight gain happens, silently, along with the weight gain, which is the most obvious sign, there are other deep internal health complications that also develop. Biggest being, the risk of a cardiac event happening, such as a heart attack, right? We hear many people say that, this person was fine, he was hale and hearty. I met him yesterday, I was speaking to him yesterday, and suddenly he suffered a stroke or a heart attack. So that is one internal complication that keeps happening as a result of being overweight. Along with that, diabetes. Diabetes also, it is not discovered overnight. Maybe around 10-12 years of neglect of a bad lifestyle, suddenly is discovered one day, there's a diabetes complication. Third type of complication that can happen is thyroidism or a hypothyroidism, to be specific. The thyroid is a gland located in the neck, okay, and it is responsible for many important hormonal functions. That tends to get disrupted, so thyroid problems happen. Biggest issue is joint related, because since you become so overweight and there's also lack of exercise, right? You're taking a flight of stairs to the first floor. Many people complain that, oh, I'm having joint pain now, or oh, I'm having neck pain now, because the body weight has become so much. Even when you perform a simple activity, your joints cannot handle that stress. So to summarize, things like risk of a heart event, these are called comorbidities.
Okay.
Obesity is the first issue that happens, being overweight. Along with that, the other problems and the other diseases are comorbidities, meaning happening alongside obesity, such as risk of cardiac events, thyroid problems, diabetes, and joint issues, where your ability to even do a basic activity, that is heavily compromised.
So what precautions can be taken? মানে আমরা কি কি করতে পারি যাতে এই ধরনের রোগ আমাদের না হয়?
Yeah, so the biggest precaution that we can take and the biggest solution to avoid all these health risks is, number one, having the right approach and the right mindset to it. The biggest problem which I have noticed is that many people think that there is a shortcut or a quick fix. They see somewhere online that someone is offering a 30-day program for 10 kgs loss, 15 kgs loss. So they begin chasing after that. So probably they'll be strict with themselves for 30 days. They'll try their best. They'll start going to the gym. They'll be on a very strict diet. And within 30 days, they'll realize that, it's too unsustainable for them. And they end up giving up on the entire process. Again, they will feel motivated after a few months again. And they'll keep that cycle on. So it will be on and off and on and off, and eventually the person gives up hope. So that mindset that I will chase after a shortcut and I will lose weight quickly, that is very dangerous. What I would in fact recommend is making or taking decisions which you can sustain in the short term and then get an overall lifestyle change. Best example is, let's say if you are completely unfit and you have never done any physical activity, and you're living a very sedentary lifestyle due to your job, rushing to the gym immediately thinking, I'm going to make that change, that may not be the best step. Maybe just starting with walks. Maybe if you're in your office, okay, today I will park my bike 10 meters away. After logging out from work, I'll have to walk a bit more.
So that 10 meters of walk can actually cause impact.
Yes, because we are starting off with something very gradual and small. Then after when 10 meters becomes very easy, then we'll feel like doing some other activity. We can do some more steps. Maybe instead of doing 5,000 steps, we can do 6,000, 7,000 steps. We can gradually keep increasing that. Next, suppose a person is reliant on having 4 meals outside in a day. The first step they can take is, okay, instead of having 4 meals outside, we'll start with having 1 good meal at home, and we'll start making that step. So it's a very small change. Over time, that person gets adapted to these changes and they start seeing results, and that will keep motivating them to make more changes. So when that happens, over a period of time, the person's entire lifestyle changes, and then they can sustain their health and fitness.
শুধু চেঞ্জ বা ডায়েট নয়, ইভেন অনেক জনের এই মিসকনসেপশনটা থাকে যে হেলদি ফুড টেস্টি হতে পারে না। সো ডক্টর, আই উড লাইক টু নো যে ডু ইউ এগ্রি?
So yeah, don't call me doctor because that would be wrong. I'm not doctor.
So.
Right. Okay, so you can just ask it again.
Yeah. তো আমার অনেকেরই মিসকনসেপশন থাকে যে হেলদি ফুড কান্ট বি টেস্টি। So would you like to disagree on this or give us some clarity?
I would 100% definitely disagree with this, because see, the biggest issue is people have been informed somehow, or misinformed rather, that healthy food has to be tasteless, it has to be bland, there won't be any flavor to it. But that's not how it is. For instance, a very popular dish that we have or we like consuming is fish fry or a fish cutlet. Okay, now the masalas that are added, let's say in any food, any masala that is added, the salt, the pepper, the spices, the red chili powder, that is not problematic. What is problematic is, like I've repeatedly mentioned, the excess consumption of fats, which is oil in any format. It can be any oil for that matter, cream, it can be your refined oil, it can be ghee also in excess amounts, or butter rather. So when I'm deep frying that fish fry, along with that fish, which is a good source of protein, I'm also taking a lot of that oil which gets absorbed. So what can I do? I can keep the masalas the same, and rather than choosing to deep fry, maybe I can choose to maybe air fry it, right? So that would preserve the taste to an extent. Of course, it's not going to be identical in taste. That would preserve the taste as well, and I would also maintain my health by controlling my fat intake.
Thank you so much, sir. And আমাদের দর্শকদেরও কিছু প্রশ্ন রয়েছে। প্রথম দর্শকের প্রশ্ন,
আমার নাম কস্তুরী, আর আমার কোশ্চেন হচ্ছে যে হেলদি খাবারের সাথে মেন্টাল হেলথের কোনো রিলেশন আছে কিনা?
Right. Again, when it comes to unhealthy food consumption, the biggest, I would say, psychological problem that arises, I'll just name 2 as an example. There are several psychological issues that occur when we have a bad relationship with food. For example, number 1, something known as body dysmorphia. So when we automatically become overweight, okay, for most people we've seen it does negatively affect their self-esteem and self-confidence. Every time maybe they're going out in a gathering, they're very conscious of how they're looking, right? That confidence is affected. And when we speak to people who started eating healthy and maintaining a fit regimen, the first thing that they tend to say is that ever since I've gotten fit, I feel much more confident. My self-esteem has been elevated since I've started eating healthy, and that has also affected my mental state. Second, I would say from a psychological standpoint, is when we eat a lot of foods which aren't nutrient dense or they're not that nutritious, ultimately it does affect our energy levels. We end up feeling either sluggish or our productivity gets hampered. It is not immediately noticeable. But the moment when we switch to a much more healthier diet overall, where we're getting all the balanced nutrients, that increase in productivity is remarkable, where you feel that you don't feel sluggish anymore, that efficiency and productivity at doing any activity or any mental task, that improves. So these are some of the psychological links with healthy eating that we should remember.
আমাদের দ্বিতীয় দর্শকের প্রশ্ন,
আমি মৌমিতা, আমার আজকের কোশ্চেন হলো প্রসেসড ফুড কতটা হেলদি?
Yes, so very important question, because nowadays there's been a lot of pushback against processed foods. That something in a packet, suppose I'm buying maybe a Lay's or a chips, okay, in a packaged format, that is automatically labeled as poison, or that should never be had at all. Okay, or even biscuits which is coming in a packaged format, there are a lot of people who are claiming that this should never be there in our diet at all. So now when we use the word processed, okay, processed foods, the word comes from anything that has undergone a process. For example, milk that is available in a packaged format, that milk has undergone a process to reach and arrive in that packaged format to my house. So that milk is also in a way a processed food.
Yeah.
Okay, even if I'm buying any mishti doi in a curd format and it is available in a packaged style, right, even that has undergone, from milk it has undergone several processes and has become yogurt or curd or doi as we call it. So that is also a processed food. Now I can definitely consume that in my diet, but the quantity matters. Suppose I brought one biscuit which is packaged. Now if I'm consuming and stuffing myself with 10 biscuits in a day along with tea, and I'm taking many breaks throughout my working day,
Yeah.
then automatically that food that I'm having, that is going to be harmful for me. Maybe if I have 2 biscuits which is 100 calories in a day, which is coming from a packaged format, that is not a problem because the quantity is very low. I get to snack on something, along with I get a small burst of energy, and that is my limit. So processed foods is completely fine to have if you know what you are doing. But when you have processed foods that we do in large quantities, unchecked, unregulated, unmonitored, that is where the problem arises. So it's not such that processed foods are unhealthy, we should completely avoid them. They are there for a reason, right? And they have their own utilities, we should remember that. And at the same time, having them in the appropriate amount, or maybe in small amounts in your diet every day, it wouldn't cause a problem.
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ স্যার। আই গেস আমাদের অডিয়েন্সরা বুঝতেই পারছেন যে কোনো ফুডই কিন্তু অ্যাকচুয়ালি আনহেলদি নয়, যতক্ষণ না আপনারা সেটাকে অনেকটা বেশি অ্যামাউন্টে কনজিউম করছেন। আর আপনাদের আরো যা যা প্রশ্ন আছে সেটা কিন্তু আমাদের কমেন্ট করে জানাতে ভুলবেন না। আর এরকমই আরো হেলথ কথার এপিসোড দেখার জন্য প্রতি বুধ ও শুক্রবার ঠিক সন্ধ্যে 6টায় নজর রাখুন আমাদের চ্যানেলে।